Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to try to unpack an awful lot here in under 10 minutes so I can also share this on Instagram. I want to start off by saying to everyone who is following Jesus, please do not worry, no harm will come to you or your homes. I want to give a couple examples before I get into some biblical thoughts. I believe that street signs, traffic lights, crosswalks, all these things are placed for a reason. It's to protect other people and yourself from getting hurt. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is kind of how I see the Bible and God asking us to do things and not do certain things, right? A thought that I had is I bought an IKEA bed frame once, and when it came, it had about 500 pieces, and a little bit of pride kicked in, and I decided to try to assemble it without the manual. And when I was done, about 26 pieces were left in the corner, and I didn't know what to do with it. And over time, the bed frame did in fact fall apart. So I decided to take the entire thing apart and do it again, this time with the manual. So that's a thought I have. A few biblical stories that I want to share. Balaam and the donkey. So uh, there is a king and he is looking to overtake certain nations, but one specific nation is more powerful than his. And it was brought to the king's attention that there is a man who can curse things and God will curse it, or he can bless things and God will bless it. So the king says, bring him to me. They go to Balaam, and Balaam says, well, hang on, let me go ask God. So he goes and he asks God, and I'll paraphrase, but God pretty much says, how dare you ask me to curse my own people? Let me make my will perfectly clear to you, Balaam. You shall not go with them. So he goes back to them and says, God says, I cannot go, which sounds restricted. They go back to the king. King gets upset, sends higher advisors, and says, tell him I'll give him whatever he wants in my kingdom. So they get back to Balaam, and Balaam says, well, I already said I can't go, but we'll stay here tonight and let me go and ask God. And he goes back to God, and then God says, go with them, but do exactly what I say. I'm going somewhere with this, bear with me. The second one is Samuel. 19 nations have a king, one nation does not. So they're asking Samuel, we want a king. Ask God to give us a king. So Samuel goes to God, and God says, absolutely not. I will not give you a king. If I give you a king, the king will take over your land, your cattle, your field, your wives, make slaves of all of you. It's going to be really bad. My answer is a definite no. So Samuel goes back to the people and said, God says no. And they all freak out. We want a king. We want a king. So Samuel goes back to God. Okay, what am I supposed to do now? And then God says, give them a king. And the third one is the Israelites who were trapped in the desert for 40 years. God is providing the manna from heaven, and I don't know what's in that stuff because God gave 2 loaves of manna to Elijah and he ran for 40 days. So whatever's in that stuff is pretty good. But they insisted on having meat, and in Psalm 78, it says, through God's power, he answered their request, but before they were done swallowing it, God's anger came upon them. So these 3 stories will match Ezekiel chapter 14, where God is pretty much rhetorically asking, should I answer them in accordance to the idols of their heart? And then he says, yes, I will in fact answer them according to the idols of their heart. And which brings me to Romans chapter 1, verse 18 to 32. I'm not going to read all of it, but in verse 24, 26, and 28, it says, therefore God gave them over to their sinful desires of their hearts. Verse 26 says, God gave them over to their shameful lusts. And in verse 28, it says, God gave them over to their deprived minds. So if you're looking at the stats of today's society, there's an awful lot going on. Christians were surveyed, 1,000 Christians. They were asked a simple question, sex or love? And 80% said quick to sex and slow to love. which I find interesting because in Matthew 24, when Jesus is talking about the end times, and no, I'm not saying this is the end times, I have to study a bit more Revelation before I get into that. But he says there will be wars and rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes. Okay, that's been happening for hundreds of years, and it is increasingly getting worse. Then he says many false prophets will appear, and that's been happening for hundreds of years and increasingly getting worse. But then at the end of Matthew 24, he states something very interesting, a very interesting statement. He says, the love of most will grow cold, but whoever stands firm till the end will be saved. So if you're looking at today's society, how certain people are afraid to speak the truth in love because they don't want to hurt people's feelings, which in some ways is good, but it's more important to speak the truth and get people closer to Jesus than anything else. How men are marrying men, women are marrying women. This is all mentioned in Romans 1. Read it for yourself, verse 18 to 32. That abortions are now legal, and the list goes on and on and on. It would appear that the love of most is growing cold. And my thoughts on it is I believe that God, not to the ones who are truly following Jesus, the ones that are, God will protect them, all that stuff. But the world in general, I believe that God is pretty much, well, answering everyone according to the idols of their heart. And those are my thoughts on it. As for the book of Revelation and everything else, that's a much that's pretty much a complete different discussion. Is this Revelation the COVID-19? I'm not entirely sure. Could it be? Possibly. I'm looking into it. I'm studying Revelation. But so far, what makes the most amount of sense to me is this is what is currently going on. And I know I'm saying a lot really quick, but I'm trying to do this all in under 10 minutes. So those are my thoughts. If there's any questions at all, please feel free to private message me. If this was at all helpful to you, please leave a like or comment so I know if I should continue recording or if I should just do one recording a week. And I trust that everyone's doing well. I hope you guys are. Please stay strong. Please stay encouraged. And above all, in this time of isolation, my heart, I truly believe God is a jealous God and he wants time with his bride. So please spend time with God. Read the scriptures. Meditate on his word day and night. Speak to him. And then try to just be quiet and try to listen to him and hear his voice and have a back and forth conversation. Spend 2-3 hours with him a day. He created us. Like, we're the creation. He's the creator. He deserves our time, our worship, our praise. Even in the midst of chaos, we really need to just thank God and trust God. Because if we believe that he is who he is, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one who separated the waters for the Israelites, and we'll just the God of all creation, then we really have nothing to fear. We have nothing to worry about. So let's just please try to stay focused on him, keep our eyes on him at this time, and give him the time of day. Please, you guys, everyone, that includes myself. I'm restricting myself on, well, pretty much everything because I believe God deserves my time. He's the one who created me. So I'll leave it at that. And again,